Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Parks and Bennis podcast. You'll be glad to know we're doing these every couple of weeks at the moment because there's so much football going on. If we did it at our normal pace, I feel like there would be. I just feel like our opinions would change in such a short space of time about what's going to happen or what we think of a certain situation that it's just impossible to keep up with at the moment. But we're back after a few weeks. How was that? How are you, Aaron?
Well, after a 6-0 win, it's better than it was. I'll say that much. I'm doing okay,
Yeah, yeah. I'm not in a great place this Monday night. I must admit. West Ham are above Everton by about 7 points now, or something mad like that, and that doesn't make me happy because the teams they beat comfortably, we should be doing exactly the same, but we're not. So we're just going. But we're in cup quarterfinals and the top 7 of the Premier League, and that is really good for us considering where we've come from. So, but I'm just gonna have to see the positives. Watford update. Well, we've got a few Watford questions and amongst everything else. So, I think we'll start with the sort of the Watford angle this week. There's a just the first question we should just get into, and I think we'll discuss it at length. Is I may as well ask you because we was discussing it the other night, but I'll give you a chance to vent or to be reflective on this. So Luke Reevy, I think that's how you pronounce your name, Luke. Sorry if I got it wrong. Luke_Reevy. What's your opinions on Xisco at Watford? We'll start with that. What's your opinions on Xisco at Watford?
If you asked me a few days ago, I would have been adamant that he's just simply not good enough. And there was, apart from the first few games where we started picking up wins again, the performances were relatively okay. They were much better than the second half of Ivic's reign, but slowly it started to go downhill. We failed to win in 3 games with QPR, Coventry, and Millwall, which is very disappointing. It became clear to me that there wasn't really a style, and his tactical naivety really shone through for me. Everyone complained about the football under Ivic, that it was boring and it was too negative, but I noticed there was definitely a style. I could see what he was trying to do, as boring as it was. Under Xisco, I couldn't find anything. And for me, I wanted him out. I was quite confident that he had to go. I know people love to make fun of Watford for sacking with their managers. This is the first one I've been completely confident that one just simply wasn't good enough. It's just his managerial ability. There's a reason his only prior experience came in the Georgian League. He only managed less than 15 games before he came to Watford. So it wasn't looking very good, and I was looking into available managers that we could get. However, we've just beaten Bristol City 6-0. That is not only a very, very good win, but it's also a crucial win. And it started with Xisco's changes before the game. We've been crying out for a 4-3-3 formation for weeks now. We've been crying out for Wilkes to play in midfield rather than on the wing. João Pedro up top over Troy Deeney and Andre Gray. And he gave us the exact lineup we wanted, pretty much, apart from maybe Philip Zinckernagel, who didn't start. But it was a very, very impressive win. It was comfortably our best performance of the season. And if Xisco keeps playing 4-3-3, starting with away at Preston tomorrow, it will start looking up again. And if we can keep that form going, I'm willing to give them another chance.
For me, I just don't know anymore. I feel like for me or Watford, they just need a manager who's just gonna. Is there a manager out there, or is there a manager out there you think would unite Watford fans and thinking he'd know what he's doing? That's reachable for Watford.
I'm not entirely sure. There's only so many we can go through. I don't think we'll go for a manager in a job. And my ideal candidate would be Ryan Lowe from Plymouth. I've looked into what he's done at Plymouth, and I think he'd suit us very well. I think he'd do all right, but he's just signed a new contract at Plymouth, so I'm not sure how likely that is. Certainly mid-season anyway. In terms of available managers, I was thinking Paul Cook, which would surprise you. I do think.
Say that again.
Yeah,
I remember in the summer. Well, Paul Cook, he wouldn't suit us.
There aren't too many available off the top of my head anyway that I can see coming to us. I mean, knowing Watford, we'd probably go for some unknown manager, which again I don't have a problem with, as long as they have a style about them. Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking like a Paul Cook could do all right. I think he plays. I don't think he plays defensive football certainly, and he's available. He'll probably be able to bring the fan base together. So if Xisco is to go, then Paul Cook will probably be at the top of my list. Although it could be anyone with Watford.
Yeah, I think Paul Cook's an excellent shout. I'm a bit skeptical about how good Paul Cook is because if you remember, you probably won't. Before Wigan went into administration and it was sort of the siege mentality to go from game to game and get results. I remember a lot of their fans actually questioning the future of Paul Cook before they had any trouble because, I don't know, it's like tactical naivety or whatever, but he wasn't exactly pulling up trees before that period everyone remembers him for. I think the thing for me is I think Paul Cook is very, very good at harnessing a winning mentality. I think you look at the end of last season with Wigan, his promotions he's had over clubs. I think he's a manager who would come in at Watford, and I think personally he would take Watford to the Premier League personally because I think he would get Watford in a situation where they go from game to game and win. I think if you ask, I think Paul Cook is probably a really good shout. Ryan Lowe, I think he plays expansive football and he does well in Plymouth, and he was it Bury before they went?
Yeah, Bury.
Yeah. So he's a good manager. I just don't think he's got the experience Paul Cook has. Now I know that doesn't really count for anything. You don't get results from week to week, but I still think for me my money would be on Paul Cook. I don't think Paul Cook would get the Watford job, and it would be no doubt some bloke from the Danish league or I've never heard of before, and he'd be questioning 3 months time.
I don't think Paul Cook will be a long-term shout by any means, but I do think if he were to come in, obviously, like I said, I'll happily give Xisco another chance if he sticks with the system he played against Manchester City. But if somebody new does come in, I would probably back Paul Cook. Again, I don't think it'll be a long-term option, but I think if it's not this season, he'd be able to take us up within the next year. I'd probably say.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think he'd be a manager to keep Watford in the Premier League. I think he'd probably be swapped out halfway through the season if he went up. But I think he would take us up, and I just think there's quite a lot to like about him. Any other Eddie Howe, is that a realistic name or not?
I believe we were linked to Eddie Howe when Vladimir Ivic was sacked, and I think it was reported that he wasn't looking for a job mid-season. I would take Eddie Howe though if it did become a viable option. I think he'd do wonders with our squad personally. I know I've criticised him a lot on this and online, but at Championship level, I think he is a fantastic manager, and I do think he'd have what it takes to take us up. I just don't think he'd probably rather hold up for a Premier League job. I personally think he'd be perfect for Celtic. So
I agree.
If it became an option, then yeah, I'd definitely take him. But at this point in time, I can't see it being a realistic shout.
Yeah, Slaven Bilic has got a job now, hasn't he?
He went to China, yeah.
Yeah, I think he'd been perfect as well. But I Xisco, I think it's hard to judge him because I think his results have been all right, haven't they?
Yeah, generally he's been good. I think we only lost twice under him, but ultimately he's just.
I mean, one of them was against Mark Warburton, so that's a sackable offence. But
yeah, I like Xisco. He's clearly a very nice fella. He's clearly got the personality that the players probably wanted after. Well, probably described as a tyranny under Vladimir Ivic, if you went by what some of the players come up with. But yeah, I like Xisco. I just don't think he's good enough generally. I don't think he would be able to take us on next season. I do think we probably have to part ways then. But like I said, as long as it depends very much on what he plays tomorrow against Preston. If he sticks with what he played against Bristol City, that 3-man midfield, whether he maybe takes like Chalobah for Dan Gosling or goes more attacking with Phillips and Canagle, as long as he plays, like Hughes in midfield, João Pedro up top, then I'm willing to give him another chance because that's what we need to be playing at the moment. It works perfectly against Bristol City. I would start to question him, and again, the club as a whole, if Troy Deeney or Andre Gray, or even both, if he switches back to 4-4-2, if that happens, then
Troy was the de facto manager.
I would be very worried, yeah, because we can't be playing either of them at all. Let alone João João Pedro, who's before the Bristol City game was our top scorer.
Here's another name. Don't scream back at me too loudly. But it just came to me. Watford like bringing back managers. What about Marco Silva?
I do think he would do a good job with us at Championship level, but I don't think I can excuse what happened in 2017. He literally walked out on us. What was 2 months into the season because a team about 10 places below us was interested in hiring him after Ronald Koeman failed. Like I couldn't get on board with Silva. He'd have so much to make up for. I couldn't see it happening. I don't personally wouldn't want it to.
Everyone knows my feelings on Marco Silva, so there's no love lost between me and Marco. Let's just say. But Luke continues in his question. And who do you? Well, we've discussed the replacements. And then he's added another part of the question. I think. It's one for me more so, and he says, and how far do you think you guys can go under Carlo Ancelotti this season or long term? I'm unsure. This season, I would suggest that if we got into Europe, it would be a very good season. We definitely need to sort out our home form against teams who are below us. That's for sure. But I would suggest if Carlo Ancelotti's a manager, the sky's the limit. For me, this season, I think getting into Europe would be an excellent season. Plus, we've got the cup to contend with. I know it's going to be a difficult game to Man City, but I feel like it's a one-off game that we can definitely win.
Yeah, I do think Europe is probably the aim for Everton this season, and going forward, they're currently 7th, and it's definitely a possibility. Again, they're doing well in the cup, so there's that. They can go far under Ancelotti, but there's certain flaws that need to be ironed out at the moment.
Yeah, I think we've got such a weak squad. I don't think we've got a very good first team and players who, when they step up in the first 11, I think we can beat anyone in the league. But when we get injuries or fatigue sets in and we don't have the options to rotate, we just look really poor at times. It's difficult. I would back us to get into the Europa League this season, but it's going to be difficult. But going forward, I definitely think we can be a team that can qualify for the Champions League eventually, but just not this season because I just don't think we've got the squad to do so. Defensively, when we set out to defend, we defend well. But I think until we get the squad to be... The one thing I think West Ham do really well is I don't think the West Ham squad's amazing. But when they make a sub, it's generally like for like, so they don't lose anything through a sub. Whereas when we sub the Core off and bring on Andre Gomez, there's a massive drop-off in not even just quality, just what they offer. They don't offer the same thing. So we don't get the same thing from a sub as we do from our starter. And until that changes, I just don't think it's going to change much. Like, so if we swap out, I don't know, Richarlison, and he hasn't been great lately, and there's a question on him coming up, and we replace him with Bernard, there's a bit of a drop off between Richarlison and Bernard. Whereas West Ham, if they sub off Fornals for Lanzini, you'd argue there isn't a great drop off between them, and they they do the same things. That's the one thing I would say they have the advantage over us. They have continuity in who they can play, whereas we're just up there and then down there, and I think that'll set us back long term if we don't get it sorted.
I think when squad depth is most evident in the midfield and the attack, when you've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I believe, still injured. I know they just signed Josh King, who I think is a good signing, but for most of the season, I don't really think there's been an adequate replacement. Similarly with Richarlison, James Rodriguez. There isn't a whole lot of squad depth in those areas.
Yeah, I agree. That also brings up a question on Richarlison. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on this before I go into it. Hornet Chain at Hornet Chain, the very good Hornet Chain. Ask, what are your thoughts on Richarlison? Seen him get a lot of stick on social media after yesterday's game. I'll come on to it in a minute, but what are your thoughts on Richarlison?
I think it's quite funny, personally. I've seen. There was a tweet yesterday that I put onto the group chat that I'm in. It had some Richarlison slander. He's not been great lately, etc. And then it said Watford have had our pants down there.
Really?
It's a weird one. I think he's clearly a talented player. Maybe he needs a rest. Maybe it's fatigue. But I've not seen him perform lately. I haven't watched Everton loads, but it's clear he hasn't been at the levels that we all know he's capable of. Again, I don't know what it is. When it came to us, and he wasn't performing in 2017-18, it was mainly because of fatigue. He was playing too many games, so maybe he just needs to rest. But something needs to change with him, definitely.
For me, the way I look at it, I'm a huge fan of Richarlison, as everyone knows. I think he's a great player. I think he works hard. I think he's very good off the ball as well, sort of tracking back and doing the thing Carlo Ancelotti likes him to do. So I think he'll always play. He had a great game against Tottenham in the FA Cup, but again against who did we play? Fulham yesterday. He was pretty pathetic, to be honest. He when people say he should start up front over Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I just laugh at that, because Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I think is our best player. I think in terms of what he offers, when he doesn't play, we don't look like we're going to create a chance. If you gave us 3 games, we could have played until this time tomorrow night, and we wouldn't have created a big chance in against Fulham without Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And I just think he gets us up the pitch. He holds the ball up well. I just think the bloke's really good, and I think Calvert-Lewin especially deserves more credit, especially when you see others who are good players like Richarlison go up there. But we'll see. Another question. We'll try and stick them on Watford. Just on Watford, I think a few people have brought this up the last couple of days when we're talking about Watford, the promotion race. How do you see that going? Obviously, Watford. Where are Watford in the league now?
Currently fourth.
What are your realistic chances of going up?
It's a difficult one. Like I said, it depends heavily on what Xisco starts playing in the coming games, starting tomorrow against Preston. For me, I think Brentford should have the league wrapped up. They seem unstoppable at the moment. I know that they lost against Barnsley, but that should just be a blip. They should be back winning games pretty much straight away. So I do think Brentford will probably win the league. Then you've got the race for the second automatic promotion spot. Now, initially, I would have said it's just between Swansea and Norwich. I think Swansea have been fantastic this year. And Norwich, while I don't think their performance is necessarily merited being top of the league for so long, they're still a great side and they deserve to be where they are. But if we can continue, playing like not necessarily the same level as we did against Bristol City, but if we can keep some consistency, all year we've been pretty poor in our performances despite the amount of results we've been picking up. But if we start playing, it was similar in 2014-15 when we did go up, but it happened earlier on in the season. But we had a relatively good run under Savici Kanovic, but then lost 4 in a row. And people were questioning the manager and whether he should be in charge. But then we whacked Fulham 5-0, and suddenly our season changed and we went up. We were the first team to go up automatically. I'm hoping that the Bristol City game can be similar. I'm hoping Xisco has kind of had his moment where he knows what his best team is and what he should be playing. And while I don't necessarily think automatic promotion is still a possibility, just because we're still relatively far off, considering Swansea's got 2 games in hand on us. But I do think promotion is a possibility as long as we keep it up. So I'd probably say Brentford should go up as champions, then I'd probably back Swansea in second. But I don't see why we can't go up in the playoffs as long as we can keep it up.
The only team I've looked at this season and think, yeah, that they've got the mentality to see it through is Swansea. I think I personally think Steve Cooper's a fantastic manager in the Championship. I think we'll talk about this stuff in a bit, but I think for what he's done at Swansea, he's a great job. I think we talk about the previous fella at Swansea, finished about 12th or something with them. Steve Cooper has got them into the playoffs, and now they're probably going to go up. I think how many goals have Swansea conceded this season? It's been about 3 or something.
I think it's the best in the country. Yeah. I know that.
Yeah, I watched Swansea when they played. They played against Cardiff a couple of months ago. Now Cardiff were pretty grim in that game, but every time Swansea lost the ball, they just got back into their sort of shape so well. It wasn't completely sort of defensive either. They were playing quite free flowing football, but they were doing so with a balance that they knew how to get back and defend well as well. I think I really want them to go up. I think that they're a team who I think would be really good, who could grow into the Premier League. Whereas I think Norwich most likely will come back down. Brentford I don't think would stay up either personally. But I look at Swansea as a team that I think if they got the recruitment right, I think they've got the best manager out of the three to give it a good go.
Yeah, I'd probably say Swansea will be the favourites to stay up out of, if we're saying Brentford and Norwich as well. I do think Reading could be in for a shout to the playoffs. I can't see them going up automatically.
Already bashing.
I wouldn't have said them at the start of the season because, I thought they finished mid-table. Then they went on that run where they were top of the league for ages, but they were massively overperforming their XG. Then they came out of that run, side underperforming, and they were looking really poor. But they seem to have found that balance now, and they're probably performing just about right for their results. So, for me, automatic promotion is out of the question. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they manage to do it through the playoffs. They've probably got more bottle than Watford do. Certainly more bottle than Bournemouth do at the moment. So it wouldn't be any surprise to me if they manage to do it through the playoffs. Most likely against Norwich, I'd probably say, but it's going to be a tighter run in than I would have initially thought.
Yeah, Reading's manager is a disciple of Simeone, isn't he? I read on a Sky Sports article at the start of the season. I can't say I've watched him too much, but I definitely heard he learned a lot of Simeone.
Yeah, they don't seem to be like an all-out attack team. I think they're one of the top scorers in the league, and they got a relatively good defensive record, I think. They're not. I do see Simeone a bit in that, and I do think they're a good side and can definitely challenge.
Yeah, but as we're on the Championship, Reece Makinson at Reece Makinson has asked most overrated and underrated managers in both leagues. Now we'll do an overrated and underrated for both, but we'll start off with the Championship as we're talking Championship at the moment. Who would be your most overrated manager in the Championship? So we'll do that first. We'll discuss that.
That's a tough one. I'd probably say compared if we're talking solely on the job that he's done this season, definitely I'd argue Gary Rowett maybe, just because I expected Millwall to do better. No, that's not to say he's a bad manager or anything. They're only 14. They've been quite poor. I'd say they've been towards the lower end of the league most of the season. Similarly, it's certainly, again, I can't really see any standout names for overrated in the Championship. You've got Michael O'Neill at Stoke, who I do think is a good manager, but I believe they're 12 games without a win now. They don't look like they'll be getting in the playoffs, which again I thought they might be able to challenge. And then I'd argue maybe, and I don't know if this is a bit of a push, but I'd argue Daniel Farke at Norwich, who
he was going to be my one.
Yeah, again, it's not to say he's a bad manager, because at Championship level he is. He's a good coach at Championship level, but I do think people maybe overrate him a bit. I think he certainly looked tactically naive last season, which again I know was in the Premier League, so he might just be in that sort of thing of being good enough for the Championship, but just not be able to cut it at the Prem.
Yeah. For me, I was going to say Daniel Farke because, yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan, and I think the plaudits his Norwich team got for getting whacked 8-0 every week in the Premier League was embarrassing. But similar to Leeds, but they were even less successful at doing it because they didn't even beat the teams in and around them. But for me, from an outside looking in, for the plaudits they get for their style and whatever, and for what they actually produce from year and year, and the fact they always seem to just met into nothing eventually is, for me, the most. I don't know what you think about this, but to me, the manager who's the most overrated in the Championship for me at the moment. I'm not saying he's a bad manager. I just think he's overrated. Is Tony Mowbray at Blackburn? I just think people think out there he's done a really good job there, and he has. But I wonder. I've seen a few of their fans. One was asking for Quique Sanchez Flores, which I didn't quite get, but another one was just saying that he had to leave. However, what do you think I'm way off the mark there? Or?
No, I don't disagree with that. I think he's done a good job. Playoffs isn't totally out of the question, although they are currently 7 points off sixth. He's done a good job, and I probably say Blackburn should be around 9th and challenging the playoffs. But they probably do have the players to do better. They've got Adam Armstrong, who is still one of the top scorers in the league. They've got Harvey Elliott on loan. They've got some very good players, and maybe they should be doing a bit better than they are.
Yeah, he was one for me. Daniel Farke was another, but I mean, I can't argue if he goes on to win the league, can I? I'm surprised you didn't say Chris Hughton, your favourite manager.
I didn't really know. He did occur to me, but I think it's tough to say for sure if he's an overrated coach per se. Maybe in terms of the job he's done, because he came quite early and they've only really just started to get the results to make me more confident they'll survive.
Yeah. Do you know who's a really shit manager? Aitor Karanka. What an absolutely woeful manager. His teams just look really, really bad every time I see them play. It's not even like good defensive, it's just bad.
Yeah, there was a point that I thought they were doing okay, and I looked at their results, and they're really poor at the moment. I saw them against Bournemouth, where they took the lead, and they just kind of capitulated against them. They couldn't get. I think they equalised twice. One with I think it was a good finish from Scott Hogan, I believe. But then they just conceded again, and I couldn't see them getting back in the game. They're currently 23rd, and it looks like they're going to be going down because you've got teams down the bottom. You've got Paul Warner, Rotherham, who I think should be good enough staff. I think he's a good coach. Coventry, they seem to be quite inconsistent at times. Some points they look like there's nothing about them, and then there's the next where they look like they might have a chance. You got Wayne Rooney at Derby. And I don't really see anyone else really being pulled into that relegation battle, so it's looking very worrying for Birmingham.
Huddersfield are closer to it than I thought they were.
Yeah, again, I thought they'd been better, and they just kind of just fall off. They've gone quite a while without a win now.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a mad league. I struggle to. Cardiff were about 18th the other week, and now the 7th. So you struggle to get sort of understand. On that note, who would you say is the most underrated manager in the Championship?
I find this easier to work out for me. That you've got Paul Warner, Rotherham, who I don't believe gets enough plaudits. Valentin Ismail, I think you say at Barnsley. I think he's actually.
Yeah, don't start me on him.
I actually think Barnsley could challenge the playoffs next season. I think they're fantastic when they want to be. They play an expansive style of football. I thought they might struggle after they lost Gerhard Struber. I think in October. They were down the bottom for quite a while. I think until they got Ismail. They're a good side. I think Ismail's very underrated, and the last underrated coach I'd say is Alex Neil. I think he's done a very good job with Preston, and they seem to be that one of those clubs that are always around the chaos, but just can't break in. He's done a good job at Preston, and I'm sure they'll continue to challenge the playoffs if they can.
Yeah, I've got two names to give you. One's Jonathan Woodgate. No, it's not. The two names for me who I'm looking at this bigger picture. Alex Neil would be one. I forgot to give his name, but yeah, you've mentioned. But two others for me. I think Steve Cooper. I think as much as we're recognising him to be a really good manager, I just don't think on the higher echelons of English football he gets the respectable what he's done at Swansea, and I think some way or the other he'll be in the Premier League next year. I think really good coach. And another one for me, bit of a one from the old guard who I think is just a really good manager and doesn't get the credit because he hasn't been around as much lately. For me, Mick McCarthy, I think what he's done in the Championship over the years, I think incredible. But I think as I was saying to the other night, that people are sleeping on them for top six. They're only 6 points behind, and they're unbeaten in six, winning three. So if they could keep their form going, they could potentially sneak in there. But it'd be difficult for them. But for me, Steve Cooper and Mick McCarthy are as good as it gets in that league.
Yeah, I won't argue with that. You know, you can't love Mick McCarthy. I don't think he's an amazing coach. I think he's just solid at Championship level.
No, I don't.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like the Championship without Mick McCarthy.
No, he's quality. He was quality as a Sky pundit as well, wasn't he?
Mm.
I mean, he was really good. I just like the fact that he doesn't really care what he says. He just says it. And I think that can get you into somewhat of a trouble, but I don't think it does with him because I think there's an element of just, oh, well. I quite like Neil Harris, and I think Bristol City should look at Neil Harris as a potential replacement for Dean Holton. I think he'd do okay there, but I think Mick McCarthy's a step above even him. I think he's in the same group as Neil Warnock, isn't he?
Yeah. You know, I thought Neil Harris would do better at Cardiff. It's a shame that it didn't work out for him. He is good at Championship level.
But that's a classic example of manager loses his job. It doesn't make him a bad manager, as people like to tell me.
It depends on the circumstance, and Neil Harris' case doesn't make him a bad manager.
No, it was just unfortunate for me. I think it just didn't work out for him. I think I would like to see him at another club in the Championship personally. Maybe one lower down where he can fight against the odds like he did with Millwall.
To be fair,
Millwall.
I do think Bristol City's a shout for him. I think I've seen someone on Twitter compare them to Hull last year, and I don't think it's on the same scale, but it's looking very worrying for them at the moment. I mean, you know, I saw them against us. We battered them 6-0. That's not something you want from us, and because you know we've been poor for a while. You don't do 6-0 to Cisco Munoz.
Yeah, I mean, do you think Lee Johnson's still the manager with a mask?
I think it's just so odd from Bristol City. No, I rate Lee Johnson as a manager, but it clearly wasn't working out. He gone stale, so you don't replace him with Lee Johnson's number 2 because that was never going to work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Lee Johnson, and he's Sunderland now, isn't he?
Yeah.
Well, I know they got on at the weekend. He's let down my football bet, so I know how they go. But I think another one who's quite underrated, and you're not gonna like this, is Nathan Jones at Luton. I think he did badly at Stoke, but I think he's done a really good job at Luton both times.
Yeah. I'll praise him where necessary. I don't like Luton, as you probably guessed, but
that's acceptable.
He's done a good job there. He's terrible at Stoke, but yeah, I think I expected Luton to be in more trouble, and I probably would have expected them even more if they didn't have Nathan Jones. I think I'd say people maybe slept on him a bit. You know, I didn't actually think they'd go down as much as many people might think. I would have said, but I thought with Nathan Jones that they'd be fine, and they've actually exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, that's I would agree. So that Paul Vaughan as well. He's a really good manager, and the fact that they're in the league, I think Gareth Ainsworth. The fact that it's just incredible that they're there. But
yeah, everyone knows that the job Gareth Ainsworth's done at Wickham. You know, they've got a League One, maybe even a League Two squad, but he's done fantastic to get them even in the Championship.
Yeah, unfortunately, they will probably get relegated this season, but the fact that they're in the league with some of these teams, the fact they're in the same league as Norwich and Brentford's a real feather in the cap. But I think if they go down and stay in League One next season, it's been a good season for them. So we'll just shall we move on to the Premier League sort of equivalent of that? So Reece also asked most underrated and overrated manager in the Premier League. This should get a bit more fun, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
For
one thing, I know a bit more about Premier League managers, having spent last 5 years taking the piss out of them.
This is I said to Reece that he was asking for trouble with this question, but yeah, who would you say the most overrated manager in the Premier League?
Okay, firstly, by the media alone, and I very much like him, but Marcelo Bielsa.
Okay,
great manager, done a fantastic job at Leeds, but the media just massively overhyped him. Sam Allardyce.
Interesting.
I'm going to say Sam Allardyce. I actually said when people were suggesting him to replace Javi Gracia last year, I didn't want him in charge because I thought not Javi. It was when we sacked Kike. I didn't want Sam Allardyce because I thought it would be too similar to Kike. And I should stand by that. If he can't keep West Brom up, which it's looking like he's not going to be able to do, I'm going to say Sam Allardyce is overrated. And maybe Mikel Arteta to an extent, I'd say. I mean, maybe not so much anymore, but certainly at the start when he first took over Arsenal, I thought people were mainly looking at the fact that he worked under Pep to say that he would do a good job.
Yeah. Well, let's roll this off now. For me, the most overrated manager in the champ. I think the fact that I saw people put him over Solskjaer on the famous tier list. I think Arteta's definitely one. I find that incredible. I don't rate him at all, to be honest. It's not even a little bit like it can get. I just don't see it with him. He beat Leeds, but yeah, brilliant. Well, I'm made up of them. I just don't think he's a good manager at all. I just can't think of anything positive to say about Mikel Arteta, as people know. Graham Potter's not going away anytime soon. I think he certainly turned it around, and good luck to him for that. But I still don't understand how our manager can win 3 home games all in different years and expect to be rated at all. And the last one of you've named 3, I'm struggling with this one now. Sam Allardyce isn't a bad shout, but I feel like you're judging him only on West Brom here. I think everywhere else he's done well.
I wouldn't say I'm rating him only on West Brom. I said it when a lot of Watford fans wanted him. I think he's obviously a survival specialist, but I think it's kind of maybe overhyped in how he does it. When I looked through his achievements of keeping clubs up, I didn't actually very often that he was keeping up a club that was genuinely in the mud, like far from
genuinely in the mud.
I'm talking like far from survival. I looked through it, and normally they were kind of on the edge, maybe level on points or a couple points off safety. Maybe they just needed somebody to stop them from dropping into the bottom 3.
Yeah, I understand that. The last one's quite difficult. Bielsa's a good shout, but I do quite like him mainly because he doesn't speak English in his press conferences.
Yeah, I do think Marcelo Bielsa is only overhyped by the media. I do think he's a good
manager. I like him. I'm not a huge fan of his football, but I like him personally. I just think there's something rogue about him. So yeah, I mean, this pains me to say, but if I had to give you a third one, you're not gonna like this, but for a manager who's been beat 9-0 twice and loses games perennially, I don't think he's an elite manager, Ralph Arsenal. I think he's a good manager, but the pedestal he gets put on, I think, is a bit too much at times. So if I had to give a third one, it'd be him. I like him a lot, but I don't. Yeah, I feel like I need to wash my mouth out with soap and water now. So I'm gonna end it there. But
somebody I considered was mainly based off this season is Nuno. I wasn't really sure about that. You know, they're 12th, which is a
They
massive
spent a lot of money, haven't they?
past years. Yeah, I think that he's clearly got flaws. I've seen a lot of Wolves fans complain about certain things. He's clearly a good manager. He's done a great job at Wolves, but I would maybe argue that they've just been that good over the past couple of years that this drop off was expected. But you know, if I had to give a third, I wasn't sure on Arteta, so I'd maybe say Nunes and honorable mention.
Maybe. But yeah, now that's underway. Who would you say is the most underrated managers in the Premier League?
Sean Dyche. I think that's fairly obvious, although I would argue that it's not so much anymore. I think more people have started to take notice.
It depends. That depends, but we're underrated as to where. It depends how good you think he is.
I think I'd say he's one of the best.
I don't underrate.
I'd say he's one of the best managers in the Prem. I'd probably say that a lot of people wouldn't consider him that level. So I'd say Sean Dyche. David Moyes deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a third, I don't know if this is controversial. I know they're relatively far off survival. Scott Parker, who I think I certainly underrated him at the start of the year, but I think he changed the way Fulham play, and it seriously benefited them. So if I had to say a third, I'd maybe say Scott Parker.
My three, for me, I consider Sean Dyche to be probably pound for pound the best coach in the Premier League, because I just don't concede anyone else could be able to do that job as well as he does it. I don't even think anyone could even come close to it. So I would say Sean Dyche, David Moyes as well, very good shout. I think he's a very good manager for what he does and what he's done at West Ham. But we must also consider the absolute misery spells he's had before West Ham. So I that's quite difficult. Brendan Rodgers, I think he for me is an elite manager, and he doesn't. I think I don't know if he gets talked about in the same breath as elite manager, but I think he is one. For the fact that he's had the lowest net spent since he's joined the club, and the 15-point clear relegation every season, I think, despite the fact that there's grievances this season, I think Roy Hodgson, I think over time, is one of the most underrated managers in the league. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, whether you like it or not, I don't think they look well coached at times, but I think the results speak for itself at times. So he's certainly doing a lot better than what we thought he would. If I had to give it'd be Dyche, Moyes, and Rodgers for me.
Yeah, I think compared to what people think of him and what he probably is, I'd say Sean Dyche. And again, I think more people have started to take notice, but a lot of people probably won't consider him as one of the very best in the league.
Here's a controversial one now. It'll probably get clipped up this, but it sounds ridiculous, but I don't think it does, considering how good he is. If Tottenham decided to part away with Jose Mourinho, do you think he would do any worse?
What, Sean Dyche?
That's a tall order, because of the difference in mentality it would take for him to go to Tottenham and change it around immediately.
I think it's easy to say. I think it's easy to say Sean Dyche would do well at a bigger club with money, but there's a lot to consider. You've got mentality, you've got his style, the way he brings in players. You know, there's too much to consider to know for sure if he'd be a good fit.
Yeah, Wolves. I take away the Portuguese, sort of like every player's Portuguese. Do you think Wolves would suit him?
I'd say maybe. I'd say more so than Spurs. You're probably looking at a Palace or West Ham, maybe a Villa that probably suit Sean Dyche the best. I think he's definitely a superb manager. But with that being said, I would argue that mainly because of the difference in mentality, he wouldn't be a good fit at any of the top clubs in the league. You've got
about Newcastle.
Newcastle will be probably the most perfect. If you choose any club apart from Burnley, I'd probably say Newcastle is the team that fits in the most.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I still think he should sit out at Burnley for a bit longer, because it's so difficult to go to another club and get it as right as he gets it there, because as much as we talk about how incredible the job he's done is, it suits him because he knows that he controls everything, so he knows how to get the job done from year to year. They're currently, I think it's 10 points clear of the bottom three, something like that, which from how they started the season, 8 points clear, I think, with a game. Well, they played the same games before, but they played them on Wednesday night. Could be 11 points by then, so he for sure for me is definitely one of them. So now that we discussed that, move on to another question. And this one feeds into your bashing of Sam Allardyce from Terry. If West Ham go down, what comes next? Sorry, West Brom go down. What comes next for Sam Allardyce? Does he retire with his never gets relegated title rescinded, stay at West Brom and try and get back up, or just wait for another Premier League rescue job to come up in a few years as if it never happened? You go away with that.
I think Sam Allardyce would definitely leave West Brom. I'm assuming they go down, which I think they will. I don't think he was ever really interested in keeping West Brom up, if I'm being totally honest. I maintain he's always just been interested in the paycheck. The amount of jobs that Watford included last season, but who I believe he turned us down, but the amount of clubs.
Why did he do that? Well, your situation was so much more salvageable than West
This is what I'm saying. I'll go on to it. I think there's been so many clubs that could have offered him a job that have been in relegation battles since he left Everton, which was 2 years ago, I think it was.
Yeah,
the amount of
more than that, I think about 3.
Yeah. The amount of clubs that could have gone in for him and haven't, it's because of the money. I think West Brom were the first club that's been willing to offer him what he wants, and that's kind of the problem now. There's a reason I think he said he retired after he left Crystal Palace, but then that went out the window quite early on because Everton offered him a lot of money. I believe they made him one of the highest paid managers in the world. It's really since then that makes me.
We offered them the same amount of money as we were going to pay Diego Simeone.
I don't think he's ever really been interested in the job ever since he left Palace. It's mainly about the paycheck. So he probably would retire, maybe do a bit of media work or whatever. He wouldn't stay at West Brom to try and keep them up, to try and take them back up. Sorry, and yeah, he'd either retire, do what he did at Palace, retire, and then wait for another job, another club to offer him a lot of money.
Yeah. For me, Sam Allardyce reeks of the American national team, something like that. If he got, I don't know. I would like to see him get another chance at a club more salvageable than West Brom. I just didn't think he had any chance of ever keeping them up.
I'm not sure. I think they were relatively close to the 17th when he arrived. I don't think it was that big.
Maybe, but I just don't think that they were ever going to be good enough.
Yeah, I don't disagree. They certainly didn't have the players. I'd maybe argue they didn't utilise the transfer window as well as they could have done. Now they brought in at the end and they went in Snodgrass. But I'd probably argue that they maybe need a little bit more.
Yeah, I still think the Slaven Bilic sacking was very harsh, considering he got given no money in the summer. And what could he have done? And he's very good for the Championship.
Yeah, I do think Sam Allardyce was always a poor fit, considering his mentality, his philosophy is so different compared to Slaven Bilic. I do think it was harsh, but I get why they did it on the basis that they didn't want to. What's that?
I get it, but I just don't think it was the right decision.
Yeah, I think it's mainly a case of they didn't want to back Bilic and risk getting relegated, but knowing they'd have somebody to take them back up. I think they just wanted to survive and go from there, and that's why they decided to bring in Sam Allardyce.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand it, but equally, I just don't think the squad was ever going to be good enough. I think they should have looked at their squad. Saying that though, they played very well against Man United on Sunday. I watched that game and they did very well in that game. And they should have won it if it weren't for Diagne, who they got up front 10 into Nias. They should have won it. So what comes next for Sam Allardyce? Terry asks.
Like I said, I think he probably, after he leaves West Brom, which I presume he'll do in the summer, he'll leave, won't get a job until another club offers him a shitload of money.
Yeah, and that's how I see it as well. Or just wait for another. The option I would go for, Terry, is wait for another Premier League rescue job to come up in a few years, as if it never happened. That's how
Could definitely go for that. That's very Sam Allardyce.
It is. Joshua Lopez asks, which teams are going to finish in the top 4 of the Premier League this season?
Man City will win it. I think despite recent form, Liverpool should be able to finish in the top 4. I'll say Man United and Leicester, I think will do it. Not necessarily in order, though. I'm not sure Liverpool will finish second.
I think City, Leicester and United I'm confident about. The last one I'm unsure about. So, Liverpool can't continue to lose games and expect them to get away with it. Chelsea, I would argue, under Thomas Tuchel, could have a chance. We would have to win a lot more home games and get consistent very quickly. But with our games in hand, there's a possibility. West Ham, maybe. It's a tall order again, maybe. But I would say Liverpool just has the upper hand over those teams. So yeah, that's why I'll be up. Relegated, do you think the 3 teams who are in there currently go down?
Sheffield United, West Brom are nailed on. I'm not so sure about the last one though. You know, if Everton had beaten Fulham, I would have been confident that Fulham were going to be gone. But you know, they got a crucial win. They closed the gap slightly, and they've got a game in hand on Newcastle. Newcastle also don't have Callum Wilson, and I believe they've got a few other key injuries. So I'm not going to say anything for certain, but I would back Fulham to stay up under Scott Barker. I do worry a little for Newcastle. It's not working out for Steve Bruce at the moment. But I do hope that I would prefer Fulham to do it, and I do hope that if they do go down, they stick with Scott Parker, because I think he's got a pretty bright future as a manager.
Yeah, I think the current 3 go down. I think there's about a 5-point gap in the end between Fulham and Newcastle. I think it is. I don't see anyone else going down other than Newcastle, though.
Yeah, I think Newcastle are the only other team I can see getting dragged into it.
Yeah, I can't ultimately see any other team going down. I think Brighton, they pulled away from it now, haven't they? And I don't see Burnley going down. So they'll be the 2 for me. And do you think Man City will finally win the Premier League?
Yeah, they should do. And they've already got a 7-point gap over United with the game in hand. So yeah, I can't really see anyone else challenging. Liverpool are completely off it at the moment. They're not in the title race anymore. I've praised and criticised Solskjaer United, but you know, I don't think they've like you said, I don't think they're well coached and they don't have enough to win the league. I personally can't see anyone other than Man City at the moment.
Yeah, Man City for me also. As we say, that finished 2-0 full time at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea have beaten Newcastle 2-0. I don't know why I've said that, but by the time this comes out, that'll be well forgotten probably.
Even there.
Yeah. So yeah, but that's finished. So I think we'll end it there. We've answered some of your questions. Promotion. So you're saying, I'm saying Norwich, Swansea, and Brentford.
I'm saying Brentford, Swansea, most likely Norwich, but I think I can't be certain anymore. You know, as I said throughout the pod, we have a chance if we keep it up after Bristol City. I think Reading have a chance, even to an extent Bournemouth if they manage to get in the right manager. But I'm definitely confident on Brentford and Swansea.
Yep. We'll be back soon for another episode. But until then, stay safe. And and we'll see you later. Thank you to Aaron.
Yeah, no worries.
And yeah, hopefully Everton are losing home games to mediocre teams by the time we reconvene. So we'll see you later.